Okay, welcome back. So this is the third tutorial. Now, if you are starting from this tutorial, I have got code in my GitHub where I'm currently up to. It's called Lesson 3 Using Templates. It's inside the Flask basic website repository. So if you are behind, that's where you could catch up. So we're going to move on to talking more about templates and how they can be used to actually feed off each other, and actually you can actually inherit code from an overall template. This is super useful because really we don't want to be having to type in the same HTML code over and over again, which would be the case if we had like a navigation menu. So there is a way with Flask in which we can actually bring in a navigation menu and place it into all of our various web pages. Likewise, we can bring in the same styling, the same JavaScript, and the same basic code that we're going to be reusing over and over again. So this is where, if you haven't been using my GitHub repository, I would recommend that you do so now. I have a file called layout.html, and that file is inside the templates folder. So if you go to my GitHub, you'll find the layout.html file. It's just going to be an example of how we can bring in the layout code, much of which you won't understand as a year 11 and 12 student, and extend that code to bring in the individual code of a login and register page. So the important thing about the layout code is I've included JavaScripts and CSS, some of which includes Bootstrap. And if you don't know what Bootstrap is, I'd highly recommend you look it up on W3 Schools, or even just Google it. It's essentially a way of making your websites look quite schmick and quite nice. Likewise, I've created a navigation menu that you can extend, and I'll show you how to extend that later on. But the important bit is actually this bit here. So inside the layout code, there's something called block content and end block. And that's a space for individual page reuse that inside our login and our register pages, because we want the login and register code to come into that point of the page. And I'll show you how that works. So we're going to go to our login page, and we're going to get rid of the HTML and body stuff, because really we just want this code to insert itself inside the layout page. So to do that, I'm going to use a curly brace and a percentage sign, and this is where we're running Python. A curly brace and percentage sign, I'm going to say extends layout.html. And I conclude by also having a percentage sign curly brace. So in the last tutorial, we had two curly braces for a variable. For an individual Python command, we can actually have a curly brace percentage sign. We're also going to put this inside the content block. So I showed you in the layout page how we had block content, and then we had end block. So block content and end block. In the layout page, you can see exactly the same thing, block content, end block. What it means is that all this login code, as soon as we go to the login page, it's going to load in everything that was in the layout page, and then it's going to insert itself inside those two tags. And we're going to do exactly the same for our register page. So I'm going to get rid of the HTML and body. I am going to place in extends layout, and then I'm going to have here end block. So you might like to pause the video now and just make sure you have done that correctly. And once that's done, we now can run our Flask file if you haven't got your web server running. And now when I load up register, you'll see the following. Likewise, when I log in to the home, you can see the following. Now, I've actually got those two links are actually inside this basic layout. So I've got the navigation menu showing login and register already, and they're linked in. So now I can actually link between the two of them. If you want to change that menu, you would just have to go to the layout page and look for where it says navbar, and then you'll see where it's got navbar nav, and you can see that I've got my two links there. I've got a slash and I've got a register. So now I've actually got my pages looking nice. They're linking in Bootstrap. They're linking a few other things that you might need later on, and the code's working. All right. So looking at that now, again, we could pass in variables if we wanted to. I just thought we'd quickly just conclude this particular one because it's going to be a short tutorial by looking at what's actually happening with the Flask. You'll notice that the GET requests are still being run, but I'm also firing off other GET requests. So the important thing about how the World Wide Web works is that when you click a URL, where you type in a URL, you're firing off a GET request to that web server. That page itself might have other content inside it that it also fires off a GET request to. So sometimes that's internal content, which is what I've got here. You can see that the / means it's internal content, but it could also be external content as well. So it's an important thing to understand that web pages are actually created by firing off all these GET requests. Okay, we're going to conclude that tutorial there. I'll see you in the next one where we look at how we can actually collect data from a web page and pass it to the web server. Okay, thank you very much for listening.